At the same time, it called on Washington, London, and the League of Nations in Geneva to make other countries admit the deportees who had been driven out of Germany. On what grounds? The Polish ambassador in London, Count Edward Raczynski, argued that although these people might still possess Polish passports, they had no other connections to Poland. A bit later, Raczynski's deputy, Count Jan Baliński-Junciu, warned the British Foreign Office that while Poland had so far been able to tamp down actions against Jews, it could not do so forever. If the community of Western nations didn't help out by accepting the deportees, Poland would have only one way of solving the Jewish problem: persecution. Thanks to international intervention and agreements reached between Germany and Poland, Max Karp was granted permission to return to Berlin from the Zbochin camp on June 29, 1939, although German authorities demanded that he leave the country for good within 2 months. He planned to emigrate to Shanghai, and his American relatives raised the money to pay for his passage. By the end of August, Karp had gathered everything he needed: an undated ticket paid for in dollars, identification papers full of official stamps and seals, and the extension of his residence permit granted by the Gestapo covering the time until he was able to depart. But it was too late. The Second World War began on September 1st. On September 13th, Berlin police took Karp into custody and interned him as a stateless Eastern European Jew in the Sachsenhausen concentration camp. There he was given the number 009060 and put in what was known as the small camp, together with other people in his situation. On January 27, 1940, he died or was killed. The exact circumstances of his death are unknown. His death certificate was filled out by a Brandenburg city official named Otto Griep, who wrote that Karp had succumbed to the flu, according to the written notification of the Sachsenhausen camp commandant. Sachsenhausen didn't yet have its own death registry. It also lacked a crematorium, so Karp's body was cremated at the Baumschulenweg facility in Berlin. Karp's aunt, Rachel Intrator, had his ashes buried at the Jewish cemetery in the Weißensee district of Berlin in the grave of his mother, Anna Karp. The story of Mendel Max Karp's life and death embodies European hostility toward Jews in many respects. The German government persecuted him, deprived him of his livelihood as a musician, turned him into a door-to-door tinker, and forced him to the border. The Polish government stripped him of his citizenship and then refused to take him in. In the end, it was the Germans and not the Poles who murdered Karp, but the Polish government bore responsibility for lowering his chance of survival. German culpability, European collaboration. The deportations and murders of the Holocaust were the result of German initiative. Germans controlled the bureaucratic operations, detaining people, sending them to ghettos, and confiscating their possessions. Germans developed the technology of the genocide. They organized the mass executions and death camps. They unleashed the violence against the Jews in the states that were occupied by Nazi Germany or allied with it. There is no question that the ultimate culpability rests with the Hitler regime. Nonetheless, the genocide could not have been carried out solely by those who initiated it. When we examine the daily practices of persecution in various countries, we cannot fail to note the ease with which German occupiers were able to enlist local nationalists, National Socialists, and anti-Semitic movements to serve their ends. Without at least passive support in these countries, without the help of administrators, police, state officials, and thousands of non-German helpers who all played a role in the atrocities, Hitler's monstrous project could not have been realized with such breathless speed. There is no way we can comprehend the pace and extent of the Holocaust if we restrict our focus to the German centers of command. On learning of Hitler's plans to wage war on the Soviet Union, Romanian dictator Ion Antonescu, for example, saw an opportunity to rid his country of its Jewish population. Romania needs to be liberated.